Good Shabbos. This Shabbat, we have two sets of readings. Two sets. A longer set and a smaller set. The longer set is the Parsha. This Parsha is Mishpatim. Mishpatim, which means statutes, because the whole Parsha is filled with statutes. Almost all of the Parsha. The Mishpatim, this Parsha directly follows from last week's reading of the Hebrews reaching Mount Sinai. Last week, the Hebrews, in the telling of the story, reach Mount Sinai. We read the Aseret HaDibrot, which gets translated into English as the Ten Commandments, but it's clearly not Aseret HaMitzvot. It's Aseret HaDibrot. It's the 10 utterances, the 10 words. There's whole bunches of drashes that can be done around that, but it's 10 statements. There's more than 10 mitzvot probably in the 10 commandments, and there's certainly more than 10 mitzvot, certainly more than 10 commandments in the Torah. In fact, this week's Parsha, according to Sefer HaChinuch, the book of mitzvah education, this anonymously written book from Jewish Spain in the Middle Ages, which gives reasons for the mitzvot. According to Sefer HaMitzvot, there are 53 mitzvot just in this parsha alone. 53 commandments. And these commandments have to do with, they are civil law, personal status law, financial law, liability law, laws of theft, laws of murder and kidnapping, laws of sexuality, laws of court testimony and court procedure, laws of lending, dietary law, ritual and religious practice law, Shabbat and holiday laws, laws about offerings, and laws about how society should protect the weakest and most vulnerable, and so much more. And these laws are all then framed by the Parsha as a continuation of the Torah revelation given at Mount Sinai, which we started reading about last week. So if we were to look at near the end of the Parsha, the last part of the Parsha, suddenly it's no longer listing of statutes, but it's a mystical experience. Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which the Lord has spoken will we do." So it's a mystical experience and a covenanting ritual. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the mountain and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent the young men of the children of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he dashed against the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people. So there's this book, there's this document with and they said, all that the Lord has spoken will we do and obey. Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. We will do and we will understand. We will do and obey. We will do and shma. And the rabbis make a big point about this. We do it first. The do is first. Then you understand. It is opposite what might be a modern and in some ways Protestant approach to religious practice, which is to say, I couldn't possibly do this if I don't understand what I'm doing. I couldn't possibly do this if I don't fully believe what I'm saying or fully understand. I mean, I would be hypocritical to do that. That's something we hear a lot in American society. But what the rabbis are saying is, do it. You're not going to understand it until you do it. You're not going to know what it's like to be in the water, and you're not going to know what it's like to be swimming until you're in the water. So do it. We have this prayer book. You don't have to necessarily, you shouldn't necessarily wait to be moved before you start saying the prayers. Start saying the prayers, and then that will move you. So that's na'aseh v'nishma. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. This ritual goes on. Behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you in agreement with all these words. Then Moses and Aaron and Nadav and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. And there was under God's feet the like of a paved work of sapphire stone, and the like of the very heaven for clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel God laid not God's hand, and they beheld God and ate and drank. So you see, it's definitely a mystical experience going on here. And these events then are framed, as I said, to be part of the Sinai experience, because at the end of this section, Moses went up into the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days, and the 7th day God called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud, and the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses entered into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And Moses was in the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So much there to unpack. But this book of the covenant seems to be a separate thing from the tablets of stone. There's something, this is the fine print to the 10 words that were heard. There is so much to unpack with that, including one of each of these laws have something to unpack in it. The second reading for this week is much shorter, and it's taken from Exodus 30, which begins the Parsha coming up in a couple weeks. And this reading is the reading for Shabbat Shekalim. Today is what is called Shabbat Shekalim, the Shabbat in which we read the section about the shekalim. A shekel is a measure, a weight of money, or a weight of metal, presumably of silver, perhaps. And here is the reading for Shabbat Shekalim, which in the traditional service, a second Torah will be taken out, and this would be the maftir, the extra reading. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when you take the account of the children of Israel, according to their number, then shall they give every man a ransom for his soul unto the Lord, when you number them, that there will be no plague among them when you number them. So as a note, there seems to be this sense that when you start counting people, you risk causing a plague. That's a theme that comes up. I think about this in the prison. Everybody's known by their number, which is a bit degrading, but there are reasons that there's some necessity to it in that context. But it is degrading. And we're always warned, do not think of people as numbers. Do not think of people as statistics. They're more than numbers. So how do we count them without numbering them? This they shall give. Every one that passes among them that are numbered, they shall give half a shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary. The shekel is 20 gerahs. Half a shekel for an offering to the Lord. Every one that passes among them that are numbered, from 20 years old and upward, they shall give the offering of the Lord. The rich shall not give more, and the poor shall not give less than the half shekel when they give the offering of the Lord to make atonement or expiation or ransom for their souls. And you shall take the expiation or atonement money from the children of Israel, and shall appoint it for the service of the tent of meeting, that it be a memorial for the children of Israel before the Lord to make expiation or atonement for your souls. So what is happening? Everybody, every adult would give half a shekel. Everyone's giving equally, which we might call today a regressive tax. But by everyone giving equally, first of all, they can count the shekels and multiply by 2, and they get the number of people. And everyone is contributing equally to the worship, to the worship of the temple. Everybody is counting equally, and everyone is participating in the tabernacle ritual, whether they are there or not. And this continued as long as the temple stood, up until the Romans destroyed it in 70 CE. In fact, there's some evidence that the Roman law, which didn't allow the transfer of money to go from one place to another, had an exception so that Jews over the Roman Empire could send their half shekel to the temple, and everyone was participating in it, even if they were far away. Now, when that half shekel was due the 1st of Nisan, which is the beginning of the month in which Passover falls. So this is the Shabbat before the beginning of the month of Adar. So in other words, it's 1 month and a few days from now that half shekel was due. So this section would be read in the synagogue to remind people that this tax, this bill is coming. So there was a practical reason. So and the rhythm of our community, the rhythm of that life in our community is still with us in this ritual. It's an echo through time, but it has another teaching as well, that everybody counts, and everybody counts equally in some ways. Initially, this may have been on a very straightforward level, a pshat level, simple meaning, as opposed to drash, the teaching that's drawn out of it. The pshat level may have been, this was counting for military strength. How many adult males over 20 are there of fighting age? But all these other teachings that come out of it and still continue for us is that everyone counts. Every individual is needed. So taken together, these two readings, the Parsha and Shabbat Shekalim, these two readings suggest both the importance of community and the importance of the individual. The importance of the community for the individual and the importance of the individual for the community. The community needs each individual counts, and the individual needs the community because we rely on each other, and it is and the community is an expansion of ourselves, or each individual is a reflection of the community. There's different theories about that. Some say that we are individuals and we come together and build community. Some say the community comes first. We grow out of community, and we're shaped by our community. And there are some elements of both. But taken together, these two readings talk about the interaction of community and individual. And it allows us to ask this question: what does Jewish community look like for us in our day and in our time and in our place? And what should it look like? And what do we want it to look like? In last week's reading, at the beginning of the Sinai narrative, the people were told that we were approaching Sinai in order to enter into a covenant, V'tem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, and you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The laws and teachings of Judaism which we're to live out are all pointed towards ways for each of us to be the best human beings we can be. And the practice of Judaism is the practice of building and being Jewish community, the practice of being community within which we can be the best human beings we can be. And the question that this week's reading points us towards is, what does such Jewish community look like in our lives today? We build our lives individually and as a community through the performance of mitzvot, of commandments. And I often summarize those as Torah, Avodah, and Gimilut Chasadim, just to steal a little language from the Mishnah. Torah, teaching and learning. Avodah, worship, celebration, and acts of devotion. Gimilut Chasadim, deeds of kindness. So that's head, heart, and hands, learning and teaching, worship and celebration, deeds of kindness, and I add to that always tzedek, justice. We can study the laws and readings of this week to derive insights and guidance and communal initiative for creating life and community on the basis of those principles. And in fact, for thousands of years, our people, teachers and scholars, have been deriving principles of Torah, Avodah, Gimilut Chasadim, and Tzedek from these words and teachings. And when I say that Jewish life and the practice of Jewish life is, in so many ways, the practice of being community, the practice of building community and living out community, I mean that in two ways. Externalized community and internalized community. Externalized and internalized. Externalized community is, what does this community look like that we are building in terms of the institutions and the practices? What is it that people see of our community? People inside and outside of our community. What do people see of our community when they're looking at it? What do we stand for in the eyes of others and in the eyes of ourselves? And how do these laws help us shape that? As one example, one of the laws of this week is, if you meet your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him again. Which has many different levels. I mean, it's like, if you find your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, you're supposed to bring it back. That's an act of justice, an act of compassion. But it says your enemy's ox, your enemy's donkey. Well, or one thing we can say, oh, how much the more so then if it's a friend? But this also is a teaching about how you're supposed to treat those who hate you. Treat them with justice, compassion, and understanding. So we're told to love your neighbor as yourself, love the stranger as yourself, and treat your enemy with compassion and understanding. What does a community built on these principles, what should a community like that look like, especially in days like today? But then there's internalized community. Internalized community has to do with the rhythms and values of our community that we carry inside of us. So that at those moments when we are isolated individuals in practice, we can still practice, we can carry this practice with us, we can carry this community with us. I talk about this in the prison, I talk about this in the nursing home, and I talk about this, and I think about this even for myself. And I sometimes forget to talk about it with others. But in the prison, I tell people, you cannot be in the same space as the Jewish community. But you can be in the same time. You can be doing things at the same time as everybody else. The thing is, though, you have to have a sense of what the rhythm of the community is, what the life of the community is, so you can be carrying it with you when you do that. I try to recreate that in the nursing home too, for people in the nursing home who are isolated, but even today, even earlier today, I mean, they can say Kiddush in their room by themselves, knowing that they're joining with the rhythm of the community beyond them, but they have to know the rhythm of the community. One of the most distant Shabbatot I ever spent is actually a Shabbat I spent years ago in Iceland. There were not many Jews near me. There was no Jewish community except maybe in the military base in Iceland there. But otherwise, there was no Jewish community in Iceland, at least at the time that I was there. And I was there because flying back from Europe as a college student, Iceland Air was the cheapest, and I could get a 3-day layover. 3-day layover. And so one of the middle day was Shabbat. So I mean, everything I did that day made sure to say Kiddush in the evening, and Motzi, and then you say a blessing after eating, and then Kiddush at lunch, the same thing, Kiddush and a Motzi and the blessing after eating, and the different davenings that are done. Because if you have that rhythm of community, if you've internalized that rhythm of community, you can practice community even when you are at that moment not in the midst of the community. So, I mean, this is really important for us, especially as Jews who are integrated into a larger society. As Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of Reconstructionism, would say, we live in two civilizations simultaneously. If Judaism is the civilization, evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people, we live in Jewish civilization, and we live in American civilization. And the calendars bump up against each other, and at times we're in one place when in American civilization, when the Jewish civilization is doing something else. And we have to be able to internalize the rhythms of community enough to carry them with us, which is why sometimes an act of it is Torah study, not to study necessarily the most ancient texts, but to study guides to Jewish practice, or that's like in the Middle Ages to study, or not even so much the Middle Ages, to be studying codes of law, because you're studying the practices of the community that we create with our lives. So, and that's also why, because of the importance of practicing community, both internally and externally, that I substituted out the Mishnah before the Baruch Hu. I substituted out the Mishnah about what wicks we use to light Shabbos candles, although there's a lot that could be said about that, because it's about what light do we bring into the world, and put in a Mishnah about how we build community. Shabbat Shalom.